In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Adobe Premiere Elements to apply the Chroma key effect, otherwise known as green screen. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you a finished sequence here. So watch this, and then I'll explain how we built it. So chroma keying is the technique of extracting a subject from a colored background, usually green like the one behind me right now, and then inserting some type of synthetic background underneath, such as this simple PowerPoint slide. Green screens can be very cheap, with entry-level roll-down kits starting around $100, and even less for a bucket of green wall paint. Green screens don't have to take up the entire set either. Sometimes, especially in a news broadcast, they're just a painted screen on a fake TV monitor. But they all have one thing in common. They require carefully positioned lighting for best results. And really, that's the most important part of your homework assignment for this week. Learning how to properly light a subject for an interview or a talking head sequence. Because the fact of the matter is, when the lighting's right, chroma key is really easy. And you'll see that in the tutorial. Okay, so what we've got here are two tracks. I've got a video track that I shot in the studio, and then underneath that I actually have a PowerPoint video that I made by simply using the MP4 export function in PowerPoint. I just created a slide and then recorded some timings and exported as an MP4, and that's become my background. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to skip ahead now and delete all this and start completely from scratch and show you how I just built it. It's going to be really cool. Okay, my first step, of course, is to import the video that I shot. So there I am. I shot myself in the studio, and then I dragged myself down here into the timeline and trimmed it up. You already know how to do this. Pay attention, though, to how I framed myself here. I'm watching the rule of thirds, of course, but notice that this is the same area where I plan to put my PowerPoint content. So it's deliberately framed this way so that I can get content over on the right-hand side. But as you'll see, I didn't quite get far enough over, and I have to confess I did that deliberately so I could create a teachable moment here. But it's really cool what you can do with this. I think you'll be impressed. So the next step, of course, is to get my chroma key footage. Now, I haven't done anything yet, haven't applied any special effects. All I'm doing is just inserting footage. So I'm going to go back to my Project Assets tab and get the chroma key video that I made in PowerPoint, and I'm just going to stick that right there for now. Let me close that tab out, and life is good. Again, all I did to create this movie is in the File menu. When I saved my PowerPoint, I saved it as an MP4, and it's very easy to do that. And if you've never done this, let me show it to you real quick here. Just take me 2 seconds. Here's PowerPoint, and this is the slideshow that I've created. Under the slideshow menu, you have an option called Record Slideshow. And if you press Record Slideshow, it goes into slideshow mode, and it records any of the timings that you use to advance the slides. And this is really important because it allows you to synchronize your content. In other words, this is what I did. I came in here and I pressed play on my movie, and then I listened to myself and watched myself in another window, and when I needed to, I would advance to a different slide while I was in the record slideshow mode. I then hit save, and it would save the timings, and then I went to the file menu over here and selected save as, and under the file type I change it from PowerPoint presentation down to MP4. If you have PowerPoint 2010, you won't have the MP4 option, but you will have Windows Media Video, and that's just as good. My next step, of course, is to get this stuff synchronized, and that's pretty easy. I simply scrub through my playhead here to find the point where I want this presentation to start, and of course I have to trim the presentation down so that it begins exactly where I want it to, and then simply drag it into position, which I've already done here. And this is easy for you to figure out. You just have to trim it down and then find the exact point where you want it to begin. But notice that as I keep playing here, I don't see anything up here. This is layered underneath. It's buried under the actual studio video, and so the chroma key effect is going to allow the presentation to shine through the green section right here, but it will leave me intact. And this is where it gets really, really cool. So here's how the effect is done. The first step, after we're all synchronized and trimmed, is to select the video where you want this to go. So with my clip selected, I then go to the Effects pull-down menu, click on the key on the Effects pull-down option, and find in this long list here the keying selection, and then select Chroma key. There are a lot of different options here, but Chroma key is the one that's the most powerful. And then simply drag it on top of your video. And notice as soon as I dragged it on there, something funky happened up here. The effect is already taking place. Now it looks like my shirt is suddenly wet, and as it plays through, you'll see that stuff start to pixelate. Obviously, we need to fix this. So if I click on the Applied Effects tab right here, it brings up all of the applied effects, and by default every clip has motion and opacity on it. And if I expand down this pull down arrow here, I can play with some of these settings, and here's where the magic really happens. And by default these values are set at 0, 10, 0, and 0, and all of these can be slid over. But the most important part of this process is setting the actual chroma source. In other words, choosing your root color. Now obviously this is some shade of green here, and currently there's nothing to indicate to Adobe Premiere what my source color is. So I'm going to come up here and grab my ink dropper, and I'm going to come in here and click on the green background, and suddenly things get really, really interesting. In one click, all I did was grab the ink dropper and click on the green screen, and it automatically erased all of the green colors that are similar to that shade. And now I can come in here and fine-tune this. I can click and drag, and I think if I drag this out to around 7, that looked pretty good. Tell you what, sometimes it's easier to drag the numbers down here. Do 7 there, and I think the other number that looked really good here was going up to about 17, something like that. Okay. And now, if you're looking at this carefully, you'll see that, man, this looks fantastic. Suddenly, the green is gone. You see just a little bit of a hue right there behind my hair, but it looks pretty good. And when I play this in real time,
green screens don't have to take up the entire set either. Sometimes, especially.
Okay, it looks very professional. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Okay, look at the two clips I've got here. Here's one, and here's the other. The first one, the one on top, has a chroma key effect applied to it. Actually, there are two because I've got another track here, so just ignore that other one. But here's what I want you to see. When I click on the video here, if I had problems with positioning, in other words, if I set my PowerPoint up and my content was too far over here, or if I had the tracks on top of each other reversed, I can always move this over a little bit to make some more room. And if I've done my chroma key very well, adjusting those settings, it will play seamlessly.
Especially in a news broadcast, they're just a painted screen on a thick.
You can see, for example, that I left a little bit too much padding right there, and so I can click again and then just drag it down and make that adjustment.
Fake TV monitor.
And now it looks a lot better. So the point is, once you have the chroma key effect applied, you can then, and you've got it tweaked, you can then come in here and move your video around, both your video clips around, so that you get optimal positioning. My recommendation to you is to use your PowerPoint as the background. You can also put it up on top here. It'll work either way. And then if you have to, you can slide everything out of the way. But one word of caution, if you don't have a really good match between your background and the PowerPoint, you'll probably end up getting some pixelation here, and you'll see that edge. In this example, we don't see the edge at all. I just shoved that clip over just a hair, and we don't even see it, so it works out really well. And of course, to put the final polish on this, I could come down here and trim this last part of the clip back so that they both end at the same time. And if I wanted to, I could apply a fade out effect. I'll fade that out there, and then I'll take this clip and I'll fade it. And I'll fade out both the audio and the video. And that way, when I play this here, you'll see they fade out together.
Really easy. And you'll see that in the tutorial.
Okay, so it looks very professional. But isn't that cool? Yeah, it's really neat. And here's something else that you can play with. If you go up here and turn the eyes off, you can see when you disable the eye here, it disables the chroma key effect, and you can see just how much we had to move over. For example, I've got a little bit of a seam right here, and if I wanted to, I could shove that up until I got it absolutely perfect. Yeah, that looks much better now. Anyway, and then I could turn it back on, and the chroma key effect is applied again, allowing this to shine through. So that is chroma key as demonstrated in Premiere Elements. I hope you enjoy experimenting with this, and I want to remind everybody that you don't have to do this in front of a green screen. Obviously, I have an advantage because I have a studio with a green screen, but you could pick any solid color. That's why the chroma key effect is so awesome. If you look down here, there are blue screen effects, there are green screen key effects that are unique, and I didn't use those. I used the chroma key because the reality is you can click this eyedropper tool, and as long as your background is solid, it can be solid red, it can be solid brown, it can be solid any color, you can do a chroma key extraction. Now, green and blue tend to have the best results, so there's a reason we use that. The other reason, of course, is that most people don't wear that key lime green type of clothing, and it's much easier to contrast against that. So as you experiment with this, make sure the subject that's on camera is wearing clothing that contrasts substantially with the background. Yeah, that's really important. You have to have really high contrast between the subject and whatever the background is. And again, that's why this key lime green, which is such a loud color, works really well because it stands out so much. Anyway, enjoy experimenting with chroma keying, and I can't wait to see your homework assignments.